Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Neurofeedback and Neuropsychology podcast featuring tech legend Jay Gunkelman. He is the man who has read well over 500,000 brain scans. Our goal is to provide information and promote options for better mental health. The NeuroNoodle podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you. MindMedia.com. Get the latest EEG and neurofeedback technology from MindMedia.com. Their semi-dry sensor cap is a wonder to see, and their EEG amplifiers have been trusted in the field for decades. Their neurofeedback and QEEG courses will get you up to speed in no time. Visit MindMedia.com now. So that's Santiago nice. Brand, we have reunited once again. We found a time that's better suited for you. You're halfway around the world. We're going to talk about elephants in the room. What kind of elephants are we talking about, Santiago?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I've been thinking about my experience in neurofeedback for the last 15 years now of clinical work, and what neurofeedback was in the first half of my career, or maybe I should say the first 11 years or so.
Right.
And then what's been lately during the pandemic and after the pandemic, because I think the pandemic really changed a lot of things in people, and people changed after the pandemic. And I don't know if that's been, your experience or your sister's experience of other practitioners' experience, but in my experience, it's gotten harder to do neurofeedback with people. I think people, are a little bit more complex and complicated in terms of their behaviors.
I think they're confused. There's so much competition out there for mental health. I mean, you're going up against the drug companies and all their advertising and social media, and then the stigmatism and all that. You're right. We started right before COVID. COVID hit, and people didn't want to come out of their houses, and now they're starting to come out a little bit, but they're saying, "Hey, I'm kind of confused. What can this do for me? Why don't I just take a pill?" And they don't understand. You can take a pill, okay, but it's not long lasting. People are lazy. Neurofeedback is training, so you have to work out. And once the insurance companies, I believe, what is it called, Santiago, parity laws, where you pay the same for a broken arm than you do for a dysregulated brain. I think once we get that going, I think we'll get better adoption out there. But we just need to get coordinated on the numbers that shows, hey, look, you can take a pill, you can do yoga, you can do neurofeedback. It's all there. It's just how much work you want to put into it. Now, I'm the MBA. You're the tech. Okay, so there's no degrees on the walls over here. But what are you saying?
I agree with you. No, I do agree with you. I think people have gotten lazier for some reason. I guess it was being cooped up in our homes for such a long time. But, I think people are more and more conditioned to think that things should be easy and quick. And you and I, we've been around for quite some time, not only in the field, but, in this world. So, we know things don't work that way. I know things don't work that way. That's been my experience. And now, when you tell people you need to commit for at least two sessions a week, they grunt. You tell them they need to eat better, they grunt. There's no time for exercise anymore. That's one that really gets me going. I don't have time. But I bet if I were to get your phone and look at your screen time, you would be able to fit in the time to exercise and eat well and do this and do that. So it's making it really hard because people, again, are more and more conditioned into thinking that it's take a pill and the problem is solved. And
doctor says, hey, your blood pressure is too high, or your cholesterol is too high. Change your diet, or go out for a jog. All right, here's a statin. Here's some beta blockers, and up, and then you're good. And it's just
but that's a short-term thing.
Yeah.
It's not a long-term thing, So and no, sleep is the other one. I had this client last year. He came to see me because he had brain fog because of COVID. He got COVID, and after a year after getting it, he still had brain fog. And so I started working with him, and I'm using the helmet, and I'm doing the red light therapy with him, and he starts getting better. He says,
Yeah.
this is really helping me. And halfway through the sessions, about the 12th session mark, he starts telling me, this is not working for me anymore. I'm wondering what's wrong. I'm not seeing the benefits with neurofeedback anymore. And he's in a way, he's concerned, but also complaining about it, as if it were my fault that stopped working for him. And I said, well, what has changed? And he says, well, he came clean and said, well, I've been drinking 2 to 3 glasses of wine at night, and I'm video gaming until 2 in the morning. And so, gee, I wonder why this neurofeedback is not working for you anymore. And but the thing is that they come complain that neurofeedback is not working for them, as if they could still video game as they're drinking alcohol, and neurofeedback should still do the same thing for them. I had another client who had a big trauma history, and we're working with her, and she got a lot better. But the thing is, she would blow out because she would get into shopping sprees, and then she would blow 10 to 12K in jewelry. She could easily walk into a jewelry store on an anxiety attack and blow 10 to 12K. The one time I tell her, well, we've done your first map. This is how much your second map is going to cost, which is nowhere near 10 to 12K. And then, she loses it, and she's like, why should I have to pay for a second map? And this is ridiculous. So, it's those things. And I don't know if that's the experience for other practitioners, but I'm quite concerned about those things. So, I guess the message I want to deliver to people is, if you want to get better, you have to pay the price for it. You can't have it both ways. You cannot expect to eat junk food and not gain weight. You cannot eat junk food and then compensate by going to the gym. You're gonna get a fit, healthy body that way.
Well,
And
if you
you're not
take
gonna
5,000 calories in and you only burn 3,000, something's going to happen.
Right, exactly,
Right.
exactly.
It's just
And the
math.
same
It's
thing.
science. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just I'm quite concerned because again, I think people want to get better. They're just expecting to be really quick and painless, and nothing in life works that way. That I know.
Well, it also has to be like you get an annual physical every year, right? But you don't get a mental checkup every year. And
Yeah.
that's just, pardon the pun, blows my mind that people don't think that way, because you have to look, you get your blood pressure checked so you have a baseline, right? You need to get your brain waves checked so you get a baseline. Has anything happened? Oh, you got a hit to the head. What are we going to compare it to? There's nothing to compare it to. Okay, we have to make guesses. Our guys over in Korea, iMedisync, I think they're with Dave Berkus's help. I think they're making some inroads out there with their dry or semi-dry. There's no such thing as a dry cap, Santiago, but
Right.
drier cap.
Dryer cap, yeah.
So I think, and they're working with some insurance companies on that, and they're building up their databases. That's a problem. Everybody is building up their databases, and there's a silo here, a silo here, a silo here. I can't wait till AI. iMedisync is working with AI, but just think like ChatGPT, open source. Okay, I want to ask a question, and boom, instead of Google giving me 12 links, I get the answer. Now, it's not 100% right, it's 80% right, but eventually it should be able to read those pictures that show artifacts, anomalies. Now, Jed Gunkelman, he will beg to differ. but I think once that happens, I think the drug companies will say, there's more money to be made by going this route than putting out the drugs. I don't know. I'm just guessing out there based on my, I don't know, 4 years
No, and you bring
doing
a
this.
couple of very interesting points. I'm still mesmerized by the fact that I always tell people when they ask me why should I get a brain map, and I tell them, look, if you have abdominal pain, let's say you have some level of abdominal pain, and you go to the ER, and the doctor says, well, I'm going to cut you open to find, I don't know, a tumor, and you go to the ER, and the doctor says, well, I'm going to cut you open to find, I don't know, a tumor, and you go to the ER, and the doctor says, well, I'm going to cut you open to find, I don't know, a tumor, and you go to the ER, and the doctor says, well, I'm going to cut you open to find, I don't know, a tumor, and you go to the ER, and the doctor says, well, I'm going to cut you open to find, I don't know, a tumor, and you go to the ER, and the doctor says, well, I'm going to cut you open to find, I don't know, a tumor, and you go to the ER, and the doctor says, well, I'm going to cut you open to find, I don't know, a tumor, and you go to the ER, and the doctor says, well, I'm going to cut you open to find, I don't know, a tumor, and you go to the ER, and the doctor says, well, I'm going to cut you open to find, I don't know, a tumor, and you go to the ER, and the doctor says, well, I'm going to cut you open to find, I don't know, a tumor, and you go to the E where the source of the pain is coming from. You would never let them do that. You would they need to run tests. It could be something as simple as parasites. It could be your appendix, or it could be some internal bleeding, but you're not going to let them cut you open just to find out, So just as we have blood work and x-rays and things for physical health, with the tools available, why aren't we looking at brain more and more? Why isn't this more embraced by mental health professionals? And, the technology is way better and it's very cost effective. And it's interesting because my experience has also been people are interested and fascinated by the brain, but at the same time, they're scared about at looking into the brain. Oh, you know what? What if you find that I have Alzheimer's? What if you find that I have a brain tumor? Well, wouldn't you like to know? I mean, if you do have something, as long as the odds are, if you do end up with something, you might want to do something about it.
Think of it this way. How many people want to get their DNA done? You're going to fill out that stupid history form at the doctor's office, but the best thing you can do is just get your DNA done and get a counselor, to look at it. People don't want to do that either because, like you say, they're better off not knowing, I guess.
Not knowing, yeah.
But I mean, it's a holistic thing. It's not one thing that caused whatever your issue is. It's not going to be one thing that's going to fix whatever your issue is.
Right.
It's going to be, quote unquote, this holistic approach where come in, do your DNA, okay, do your scans, physical and mental, and set a course of action. And again, it's how much work you want to put into it. Because how many people want to go to a physical trainer?
And those are the elephants in the room that I wanted to talk about, because even if you do the DNA, even if you get an MRI, even if you get a QEEG, there's 3 or 4 basic non-negotiables that you need to engage, that you're better off engaging in to have better health, and those are sleep, nutrition, exercise, and again, interpersonal relationships, to add one to those. So, those are 4 non-negotiables. You cannot not sleep well and expect health down the road. You cannot not eat well and expect to be healthy down the road. You cannot not exercise and not expect to put on some weight or, have ailments down the road. And those are the ones that we're more negligent and take for granted the most today. I mean, you've spoken with Mary Swingle about this, of course.
Internet addiction.
And I've been reading the book. I've done the workshop. The evidence is there, and yet I ride the MRT here in Singapore. The MRT is the subway here, and every time I ride it, when I go to the gym, I get on the train at 6 a.m. to get to the gym at 7 to start my workout. And there's 2 things happening: either everybody's on the phone, or they're asleep. It's either or, which tells me they're on the phone because they're not sleeping well, and they're asleep on the train because they're on the phone.
Yeah,
and it's everybody. If you see people reading a book or talking to each other, it's very rare. And that tells me a lot about the state of the health, physical and mental health of people here in Singapore. And I'm sure you find it the same thing if you ride the subway in Chicago or New York or any other major city around the world.
Well, people brag about how little they sleep. Business executives. Oh, I sleep 4 hours. Or what's crazy is, I don't know if they do it anymore, but like doctors, they would do their residency and they wouldn't sleep for I don't know how many hours. I don't want anybody like that working on my body or on my business, right? How much sleep should you get? I've heard, Santiago, the amount of sleep is where you don't set the alarm clock and you wake up when your body tells you to wake up. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. Well, ideally, if you can wake up on your own and you don't have to hit the snooze button, that's how you go. That's how you know you're sleeping well. And I mean, the general consensus is 7 to 9 hours. When I talk about sleep, I always say, okay, you need 2 things: quality and quantity, of course. So you want to get your 7 to 9 hours, but if you have, for some reason, to sacrifice the quantity, then go for quality. So I've known people who sleep 4 hours a night, very good quality sleep, and they get by very well and they're very healthy. But the people who can afford to do that are a handful. So you should aim for your 7 to 9 hours with good quality sleep. And the most important thing that you need to do is put your phone down and put that screen down at least an hour before you go to bed. You know, that should be a non-negotiable. That should be a given.
What
Put
if
the
you
phone
throw
down.
what if you throw booze in right before you do the phone? Is that a double whammy?
Oh, yes. Big time. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and
They say, wait
again,
a minute, I need a drink to get sleepy.
yeah. Well, see, and that's when you need to get assessed, because your dope, if you need the alcohol to get the dopamine going, and then you get some serotonin going to get some melatonin going, and you have a big problem, because that's non-conducive to good end result down the road. And the problem is that most people talk about restriction, but they don't talk about replacement. Okay, so I put the phone down. What am I supposed to do? Well, you could read a book, not a Kindle book, an actual book. You know, those paper books that they have in libraries, that's what you should be
I've
reading.
heard of those, yeah.
Or you should be writing, you should be talking. I sometimes suggest to people to do the coloring books, and you know, they smirk and they laugh at the idea at first, but when they try, they find it very relaxing. They say, you know, that's the best thing that I can do, because I find it very relaxing, really cathartic, and it helps me get to sleep much more efficiently. So you need to put the screen away, whether it's your laptop, whether it's your phone, whether it's your tablet, whether it's your television, and then you need to do something that gets the brain to operate at a different level. Reading, writing, coloring, playing cards with your significant other, having a conversation about whatever you want to talk about. It's very important, because I think Jace talked about this before, and you know, what I find in my experience is that 9 out of 10 people are not sleeping well today. If I find a healthy sleep EEG, it's a miracle. It really is. Most people have a lot of rigid vigilance styles, and a lot of people fluctuate in and out through the night, but most people are not sleeping well. And I'm talking all ages. I've seen children as young as 7 with vertex waves in the EEG, you know, with very serious sleep disturbances. And sometimes it's just, and most of the time is screen time.
What about the alcohol? What's going on with the alpha waves before bed? Why
Well,
does that
I
mess up
mean,
your sleep cycle?
well, alcohol, you know, first of all, it disrupts your metabolism, and if your metabolism gets disrupted, you're going to disrupt the production of your neurotransmitters that are necessary for sleep. So one of the things that disrupts this is alcohol. The other one is food. If you're having a high carbohydrate diet, what you're getting is more insulin resistance, or you're ramping up the insulin, the glucose spikes. And guess what it gets in the way of? Your neurotransmitter production. So your dopamine, your GABA, your serotonin, your melatonin, or get interrupted with poor metabolism. And what causes that? Alcohol consumption and eating, you know, mostly a Western or the American traditional diet.
Sugar.
So your sugar, your carbs, your refined sugars and whatnot. So I'm not a nutritionist by any means, so I'm not trying to give any advice to people here, but what I've read in the research is that the ketogenic diet is the way to go today. Now, it has to be a specifically designed ketogenic diet. So it doesn't mean that all of us should go into ketogenic diet. There's different levels and degrees of ketogenic diets, or different degrees of, as I like to call it, nutritional restructuring. So your nutrition should be designed per your needs, not according to what, you know, People magazine talks about, or whatever, you know, article you find anywhere. You need to go to a doctor. You need to find here's what I think people need to do, in my experience, because it's worked for me as a client in my own health, and then what I suggest to my clients when I work. The first thing you need to find is your level of inflammation, because we all have a degree of inflammation, greater or lesser. So, and we all have inflammation going on. Sometimes the degree of inflammation that we have is good, because it keeps the body aware, keeps the immune system aware of things, and it keeps running tight ship. Now, some people will have more severe inflammation or, more mild inflammation, which are the clients who come see us. So the first thing you need to assess is inflammation, because inflammation will get in the way of how your brain acts. Certain brain waves correlate with that. If you have high amplitude theta waves, for instance, and they're dominant, that's hypoperfusion. That could be your astrocytes, which means your blood-brain barrier is permeable, which means there are things getting into your brain which shouldn't be getting into your brain in the first place. You may have cytokines because you had COVID and you still inflamed because of the infection. You may have asymptomatic viral infection or bacterial infection, asymptomatic in the way you feel the symptoms or the signs, but it's wreaking havoc in your body. So I think that irrespective of what condition people come to see me, I always tell them you need to go work with a functional medicine practitioner. We need to find your level of inflammation. The moment they tell me I'm not going to do that, is the moment I tell them, then I'm not going to work with you. Because
it's short term.
Everything is integrated. It has to be integrated. So you need to find a time, you need to find the resources, because we're talking about your health. This is not me being difficult. This is me helping you. So the first thing is find out your level of inflammation. When you find that out, then the right nutraceuticals and the right supplements can be prescribed for your particular case. Because you and I may go to a functional medicine practitioner, we might get blood work panel, and your level of inflammation is going to be different from mine. Therefore, your needs are going to be different from mine, right? And so the first thing we do is find that out. What kind of supplements do you need? I think supplements are essential, and you don't need to feel sick. You don't need to be broken to take supplements. Even if you're in your healthier state, supplements help you feel even better. And I cannot do without mine. I need mine because, my brain is the moneymaker. So if my brain is not healthy, I cannot help other people be healthy. So I take care of it. I really take good care of it with my supplements. And I don't take them when I'm feeling bad. I take them when I'm feeling good. So once I find my needs, which is what I did when I was feeling bad, I found the right supplements. I found the right approach. I found the right nutritional structure for me. And that's what I keep doing all the time. So once you find that, we need to find out what supplements work for you, what nutraceuticals work for you. Then we can find the type of food that is good for you. What food are you allergic to? What food you're intolerant to? And that way we can find how to restructure your nutrition. Now, very important, because that has to do with the gut-brain axis. And the research shows that the best type of food for your microbiome, your gut bacteria, which in turns out to be good for your brain, is your greens. So you need to eat lots of spinach and lettuce and kale. And the more variety of greens you have in your salad, the healthier microbiome is going to be, which means the healthier your brain is going to be down the road. And
you brought up the bio. I think for the new people who are listening, the number one place for neurotransmitters in your body is your brain. What's the second place?
Your gut. Your intestines, yeah. And as a matter of fact, serotonin, 90% of the serotonin comes from the gut, not from the brain. So it travels through the vagus nerve and goes into the brain, but it's synthesized in your gut. So if you're eating crap, you're going to feel like crap. So you feel the way you eat. That's just how it works. So again, you need to get the proper nutrition. And greens, the microbiome is the bacteria that you have in your gut, which has an influence in how your brain acts. So your gut and your brain are talking literally, chemically, and neurologically. So what you need to do is find out what kind of food works for you. And a plant-dominated diet is what works well for most people. And when I say plant-dominated, it means that you put a lot more greens in your diet, lettuce, spinach, kale, and whatnot. And then you add the healthy fats like avocado and olives and capers. And then you add the protein and your carbs if you need to eat carbs. So for instance, when we started this process, my wife and I started together, and I lost the weight more quickly. And we had a very similar structure. So when we went to the doctor, she said, Santiago's losing the weight, I'm not. When they reassess her, They had to take the carbohydrates away from her. So she went on only into protein and greens, no carbs. And then she started losing the weight. This is what I mean, that the needs are different. My metabolism is a little faster, so I could afford to lose the weight more efficiently. And then when she started doing that, then she started losing the weight. So you need to find what works for you. Please do not follow general advice. Go get checked out. You're gonna appreciate it.
So did you go to a nutritionist, or
I
because
started
insurance
working
doesn't
with
cover that?
No, and that's the unfortunate thing. You have a very good point. Functional medicine can get very expensive. It can get very pricey, and a lot of people cannot afford it. It shouldn't be that way, but I think the effort is really worth it down the road, because it's an investment that you do once in your testing. The thing that I like about functional medicine is that they're very, very thorough with the testing. They will test you for a lot of things, because they're really about finding the source of the problem. So when they find the source of the problem, they can work with that. They're not guessing. They cut out the guessing by really do a lot of thorough testing. Can it get expensive? Yes, it can. But if you can make the effort and have that investment, is a one-time thing. And then once they find the nutraceuticals and the supplements for you, that there's options for that. There's different levels of pricing that you can work with and get the results that you want. And then the testing happens every other year or so, depending on, again, on anyone's particular case. But it's not something where you have to be constantly going. Is it hard? Yes, it is. My wife and I and my mother-in-law got into this once the lockdown started, when I was living in Colombia. And my functional medicine doctor friend said, I'm starting this elimination diet. So it consists of this, is this long? Do you want to do it? So I spoke with my wife and she said yes. My mother-in-law said yes. Great. We started doing it. But I got to tell you, it's one of the hardest things I've done in my life. The first 3 weeks, I was just miserable, because you're restricting a lot. The idea behind this elimination diet is to eliminate what inflames you in terms of your food. So you are restricted. And I was eating 5 to 6 times a day. This time I was only eating 3 times a day at very specific times. But you're cutting down on a lot of things that I really enjoyed eating. I was miserable for the first 3 weeks. I cannot tell you how miserable I was. I was cranky. I was not sleeping well. I was getting headaches. It was horrible. But I'm glad I did it, because when the turnaround period came, my sleep got a lot better. My energy was through the roof. My sleep was a lot better. My mood was stabilized. And on top of that, I was doing neurofeedback at home. So I brought my equipment with me and I was training myself, and it made all the difference in the world.
What was
It's
the
not
first thing
easy
that
to
you
do.
cut? What was the first thing you cut out? Sugar, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, so I had to cut potatoes. I had to cut rice, which was part of my diet. Sugars in all forms, sodas, dairy. We cut dairy, fresh milk, cheese, and it was replaced with we replaced it with coconut cheese and almond milk, which at first I hated. But the interesting thing now is that I cannot drink regular milk now. If I do, I get bloated right away. My metabolism has changed so much, but I enjoy it now. I do. I really do. I really enjoy the way I eat now. I find it to be very healthy, but it's not easy to do.
And the inflammation, gluten's here in the West. Is gluten a problem over where you're at? Because they process things different where you're at than they do here, right?
Well, but it is a big problem. Interestingly, Singapore has the second highest rate of diabetes in the region for such a small country, because the
Really?
island is very small, and the population here is roughly 5.5 million. Yet is the second country with the highest diabetes rate, only behind Malaysia, and Malaysia is, I think, 3 times bigger than Singapore. But the issue is, every plate that you take in Singapore, every plate has noodles and rice as the foundation. So you can add chicken, you can add the curry, you can add the veggies, quote unquote veggies, but it's lots of carbs, which are lots of rice and lots of noodles. and noodles, which are traditional pasta, which has a lot of gluten in it. So that's a huge problem. You would think Singapore being having such high-end hospitals and very good doctors, you would think it's a very healthy population, but it's the other way around. It's actually very, very unhealthy. Very
how
competitive.
does that, maybe you don't know the answer. I'm just throwing it out there. Then why are people in Japan so healthy?
Well, I one of the things they say is the diet, but healthy in
A
terms
lot more
of,
fish or than
yeah, it's more
noodles?
of the fish and stuff. But the suicide rate in Japan is one of the highest in the region. I mean, the highest in the world, interestingly, is Thailand. I was just watching a documentary the other day. Thailand has the highest suicide rate, not only in Asia but in the world. And I think Japan is just 2 or 3 positions behind that. So they, it's one thing or the other. They eat healthy, but they work themselves to death. I haven't been to Japan yet, but what I know is the culture there is frowned upon if you leave the office early. And it's, overworking yourself is enforced and it's praised. So working yourself to death is basically the way it goes, from the way I understand it. And sadly, they do have one of the highest suicide rates. I mean, they have the suicide forest near Tokyo, where a lot of people go and disappear. I mean, there's people who go there who never want to be found, and they go into this dense forest and never to be seen again. A lot of people go commit suicide there. So
competition is crazy.
Yeah, and Singapore is very similar. Singapore, it's very competitive. And the same thing, people, going to the office very early, they leave very late. And not everybody exercises, not everybody eats very, very well. So if you get into a healthy lifestyle, you could afford that. It's just a matter of switching things around a little bit. It's not impossible. It's just you get so caught up in the rat race that it's just, very. But I think these things need to be discussed. I mean, because people are always looking for the magic bullet, and the magic bullet doesn't really exist. If it existed, I would be
It
out of
exists, but
work.
it doesn't last that long.
Right. Well, there you go. Yeah. But in terms of long-lasting effects, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Do we miss any elephants, Santiago?
Well, time in general, people saying, I don't have time. Again, if I look at screen time, I can guarantee you, on average, people are spending, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours on social media every few days. I mean, and those are 4 or 5 hours where you can fit exercise, where you can fit healthier sleep. It's just, again,
they have time, Santiago. They just don't have priorities.
yeah, exactly. That's what I always say. It's just priorities. And, I think the other one is the school system. I've seen kids getting into the MRT to go to school when the sun hasn't come up. So, which means, again, I get on the MRT at 6 a.m. to go to the gym. Sun rises here around 7:15 in the morning, which means they've been up for at least an hour. So they get up at 5 a.m. to get to school, and then they do homework until the wee hours. And I think it's absolutely criminal. They have Singapore and Asia in general is very famous for tutoring centers. So they have tutoring centers for the kids. And the other was, I was walking around a shopping center with my wife, and we were just walking across one of these tutoring centers. It was a Sunday at 7 p.m. And I just saw this 8 or 9-year-old boy going into the tutoring center on a Sunday at 8 p.m. And my heart sank. I thought it was the saddest thing to see. It's just extremely criminal what we're doing to children. I don't get it.
Well, it's the competition. I don't know if they want the kids to succeed or they want the parents to live through the kids. Don't know.
I think it's both. Based on what I've seen here in the time I lived here, I would say it's both. It's the parents living vicariously through the children and getting sort of their frustrations projected into them. But there's a very strong emphasis on academics here, and academics is everything. My wife was telling me this very interesting story about a coworker from Singapore, and he was saying in Singapore they just teach us to earn money. It doesn't matter, we're happy with what we're doing. As long as we're making money, it doesn't matter. And the guy said, take me as an example. I hate this job, but I'm earning money. So it's very instilled from a very early age that it doesn't matter if you're happy or not. And I think it's sad. Because I find it sad you walk through life just like that, just like a robot that's been programmed to behave in a certain way.
I tell you, all you need is a couple of those traders to come in to do neurofeedback, and then they do better with their trades because they're not as emotional. And then all of a sudden, there you go. They don't care about their health. They just want to make more money.
They do. Yeah. And that's the mentality here in the financial world as well. Because I mean, Singapore is one of the 5 Asian tigers, as they call them. It's one of the 5 wealthiest nations. For such a small country, is very, very wealthy. And people who work in finance are that way. And they need all traits: poor sleep, heavy alcohol consumption, drug usage, type A personalities who think they're invincible. And, I don't see them as much, but I know counselors who do see them, and they tell me, man, they're destroying themselves.
Yeah.
And that leads me to the other element. I think you probably have seen this too. We're diagnosing people with neurodegeneration and dementia a lot earlier on. I mean, people who are in the late 40s, early 50s now. And I think that's just going to become the norm. So,
well, they're taking amphetamines to stay awake, and then they're taking sleeping pills to go to bed. Yeah. That does something upstairs.
Oh, it does. Yeah. And plus, you take lunch into your office, you're training, you're watching the stock market, and you're eating that soup in front of the computer in a rush, or you're getting something very quick and quote unquote convenient. You're destroying yourself. It's funny because people complain and they say, why me? But they don't look into the mirror.
Or why not? Why not
you? Yeah, why not you? Right, exactly. Well, let's see what you're doing. You're video gaming till 2 a.m. You're drinking your couple of glasses of wine. You're not getting good sleep. You had COVID. You're long hauler. You're getting your inflammation worse. What could go wrong?
Well, I think the only thing that people listen to nowadays is ChatGPT. So we just have to put more data into it.
Oh, well, it's a very interesting topic because I see the advantages, but it scares me too. It really does scare me. I think it's great. I've tried it, and I got to tell you, it's a fascinating tool. I just don't know how well we're equipped to handle it, and what.
Well, I think that's a whole nother show, Santiago. Santiago, we got to do this again, my friend. This is a good time. This is a good time. I'm willing to help out Singapore at this time if it works for you.
Appreciate it. I miss being around you guys. It's just that the other recording time is brutal for me.
I know, and it's either we have you or we have Jay. You have California and you have Singapore, but I'll keep this time open for you. You got
sounds
something.
Great.
The NeuroNoodle podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you, like our silver supporter, Mind Media. Get the latest EEG and neurofeedback technology from mindmedia.com. Their semi-dry sensor cap is a wonder to see, and their EEG amplifiers have been trusted in the field for decades. Their neurofeedback and QEEG courses will get you up to speed in no time. Visit mindmedia.com now.